Welcome to the Scale Ups podcast, where each week you get to hear Sean Steele, professional CEO, growth mentor, and advisory board chair, unpack the strategies that successful founders have used to achieve scale in their businesses. Stay tuned as he interviews the entrepreneurs who've made it, learns from industry experts, and follows a group of founders still striving to scale.
G'day and welcome to the Scale Ups podcast, where we help first-time founders learn the secrets of scaling so they can fulfill the potential of their business, make bigger decisions with greater confidence, and maximize the value they can create in the world. I am your host, Sean Steele, and I am joined today by Owen Franklin, CEO of Blue Summit Supplies. Owen, you know, this is definitely the first podcast that I've done with somebody who's not somebody who's at home. Pretty much everyone's at home, right? But somebody who's at home with COVID, but feels well enough to do a podcast. So I think we should start there, because you've had a vaccination and you've got COVID, but you're at home, right? And you would normally be in the office.
Yeah. We have a studio, a podcast studio at my office, and we have a great team there that sets all that up. And I was planning on doing that there, even though it is later, our central time in the U.S. But trying to be a responsible adult. I got exposed a little over a week ago now, and the individual texted me, so I went and got a PCR test and a rapid test, and the rapid test was negative, but the PCR test was positive. And I actually got up the next morning and ran 4 miles in 85-degree heat, which I think is like 35 Celsius, 32, something like that.
Yeah. Decent and warm.
It's hot, really hot, and felt great. So in the last couple of days, I've had like a vertigo, but I don't know if that's anything to do with COVID. It just may be a coincidence. Like, that's happened a couple of times in the last year. So, but no, I don't feel 100%, but I like talking about this stuff. So, pain is all here. So I'll probably forget about it till the podcast is over, and then I'll start feeling bad again. But at least you've removed my pain for an hour. How about that?
There you go. I can distract you at least for an hour.
Me having COVID, I'm sure this is part of the discussion. It's pretty fitting, right? Is that, that word has unfortunately been a big part of our lives the last, 18 months.
Big time. And actually just a huge part of business, and the changing nature of how we've had to get things done, and the way people think, and what people are willing to accept and what they won't accept anymore. And I think it's changed a lot. Well, before we get into COVID, I can't wait to dig in together today. You and I had a great chat offline a couple of weeks ago, and our listeners will understand why in a moment. For those who don't know Blue Summit Supplies or yourself, your background was you're a thermal engineer from Alabama. You founded this company only 5 years ago, which is crazy. 2016, right? You're an e-commerce company manufacturing and distributing office supplies, private label items on Amazon and other platforms, and on your own site. But wait for it, you're already the largest third-party seller of office supplies on Amazon. Your first employee, other than you, was only 3 years ago in 2018. And in the last 3.5 years, you've grown to, at last count, 35 staff and $30 million in revenue. Is that right?
Yeah, I think we're like at, I have a hard time keeping track of both of those numbers now. They're both about the same. I think we have like 38 employees.
38.
And we just got done through some 2022 projections, and like we're probably looking like 38 to 42 million next year.
Wow.
Just trying to kind of figure out where we're, like this year and we'll talk about this, I'm sure, talking about scaling. It's like, we're like doing some like seriously detailed forecasting, like on a SKU level. And then we're tying forecasting to, budget increases to each department. It's kind of cool. Like this is all new. Like, we used to just like, let's just grow as fast as we can. And now we're like literally detailing forecasting by SKU by month with a complicated model with inputs. But that's where we are today.
That doesn't surprise me, given your engineering background.
Yeah, it's kind of fun.
I can only imagine the level of forecasting that's going to occur.
Well, this is new. We did not do this before. We did it for other things. We did it with cash. We were very detailed about cash flow forecasting. But now we're doing it from a revenue and profit perspective.
Awesome. Well, there's just so many places that you and I can go today. So just maybe as a starting point, can you give us a bit of an overview of the business, maybe through the lens of who's a typical customer, what are their problems, and how are you solving those?
Sure. So we sell a lot of the business started on Amazon, and a lot of the revenue still comes from there, and we expanded, and we have our own channel, bluesummitsupplies.com. We sell, on their competitor Walmart. We sell a little bit internationally on Amazon's marketplaces. And generally, the buyers are small companies. We actually started selling QuickBooks envelopes. So envelopes,
Right.
QuickBooks owns like 80% of the market, and I actually designed the envelope, like the windows, to make sure it fit, in a certain orientation. So like the address showed, but like it didn't show the check amount or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where it started, with 500 boxes of envelopes. And
Wow.
it's a funny story about how we, had to find the supplier. I mean, we could go into that, but you have to be careful. You're gonna have to kind of hold me on target here. But
Yeah, that's cool.
But I mean, so the end users are
so the biggest end user is small companies rather than
small
individuals, right?
companies generally,
Yeah.
and it's very much the long tail of the internet. Where
Mm-hmm.
it's a lot of transactions, not very high dollar value. Probably
Yeah.
$25 to $35 depending on the season.
Yeah.
And and the stuff that people use, and we buy it direct from the most efficient factories in the world, and we are building a lean supply chain, and we sell it inexpensively. We sell some of the lowest priced office supplies on the internet. We're very economic against, very cost competitive against, especially stuff in like price in envelopes and folders, against Office Depot and Staples.
Yeah.
But we work with a lot of the same factories, a lot of the same products. We just have a pretty intense focus to make sure the quality is consistent. I mean, folded piece of paper, it's kind of hard to mess it up, but like, you can, it can be. And it's kind of one of those things that like, you don't really notice until you notice, and then it's very annoying, And so, but I think we've done a very good job of building really good relationships with global factories with good economics. And so our customers, they consistently get a good product that's inexpensive. That's how it began.
So let me take you back a step, because I want to talk to you about things that have happened along the way that have helped you scale, and also, of course, mistakes that have happened along the way that have been, you had some challenges along the way, as we all have. So I just wanted to jump back to a couple of things that you said. First of all, you said that sounds like you've got quite a strong price advantage in a lot of areas. How is it that you've generated a price advantage? What is it that you're doing differently that allows you to offer that to customers?
I mean, Amazon's been a big part of that. Amazon offers Amazon is unbelievably efficient from a back end perspective. What's funny is they have this, I think they did like 600 billion, like trailing T30, trailing 12 months. And like this, they have this like great website, but they're like, this is just one website, right? But their infrastructure is just remarkable. So we use, a lot of the economic advantage we've got is using, being a third party seller there. And then two, we've met some really good factories, and we worked very hard to build factory relationships, and we have built relationships and kind of sold them on the fact that we're going to grow, and we're going to aggressively pursue growth, and we're going to aggressively pursue getting customers and growing SKU count. And, the way it kind of works is, you got to think about it. Let's say an item has a 30%, let's say an item has a 70% gross margin.
Mm-hmm.
So that means that the cost of goods sold makes up 30% of the product's price. And, and let's say that Office Depot is a behemoth company. Let's say they have a 10% cost advantage on us, which is pretty large, actually. The way economics work with mass production is like, if you produce one box of envelopes, it costs way up here. If you produce 100, it costs here. If you produce 1,000, it costs here. If you produce 1,000, if you produce 1,000,000, it's only like here. At some point you reach, diminishing marginal returns, and you don't get any better, through scale, you don't really save that much. And we're kind of playing in that area. Now, they probably sell more than we do, but we still play in that area. And so like, even if they were 10% cheaper from a cost of goods sold perspective, that's only 10% of 30% of the actual cost of revenue, right? So with that math is they would only have a 3% COGS advantage to us, to revenue. And that's not a lot of money on a $25 item. And so like, it may be that we're buying stuff at 25% more expensive than they are for a box, but they sell that box like $60, and it really doesn't make a difference. I mean, there's a lot of inefficiency with overhead and with the retail stores, or, whatever it is that they do, whether it's Office Depot or someone else, is, we work with very good factories, and we have a pretty similar scale to the big boys. And so we're able to offer similar prices without a lot of overhead. We're able to buy at similar prices. We don't have a lot of overhead, so we're able to kind of make it work. And it's worked so far. We can see, can we continue to scale that is the question, because we have to add overhead. We have to add centralized employees and product managers and engineers. Can we make all that work and still keep this cost structure? we're going to have to figure it out.
Back to the reason that you started the business. So, I mean, that you talked about the fact that you started with this, you started with the envelopes, but then at what point did you go, actually, Zach, there's something really big here. Like there's something that I can really go after. I'm seeing a sort of bigger opportunity. What was the sort of the moment that led you to that?
I don't think it was a moment. I think it was like stages of a moment. And I think I think you have to, I started the business by Googling how to make money on the internet. And then reading a couple books and then Googling that. I read like Rich Dad Poor Dad. It's a famous book. I don't know if you're familiar with that book, but super famous, like introduction to entrepreneurship, we'll call it, And that's how it kind of began.
I saw Kiyosaki when I was 21 and it changed my life.
That book began it all, man. That book and a book called, for those of you who are thinking about beginning an entrepreneur journey, Millionaire Fastlane. It's a very similar book. I would call it like a modern version of. And that book changed my life. It really did. That book is the reason why I Googled how to make money on the internet, honestly.
Right.
So, I was trying to I'm trying to make like $5,000 a month was my goal, like in profit. Mm-hmm. And so you got to think about like my mindset there to mindset now where my objective is to build $1 billion revenue business by 2031 is my objective. Like that's a big mindset shift in 5 years. Big. Right. And I think it was very tiered, but it was kind of like when I found the category and I saw the economics that existed and the economics we could buy and what was being sold, I was like, dude, this is going to get big. And back then I thought big was like 5 million in revenue or 2 million in revenue. But like, this is going to get big. And then I kind of started to get comfortable like spending real money, the first purchase order was like, $10,000. Was a lot of money. Like I remember being stressed. I still remember the moment when I sent the email. I still remember the moment talking to my wife about it. It was her and I were a big part of making the decision together to do this. Mm-hmm. We started to spend real money. We found other categories, like we're big in the folder space. And so we found a good factory there and we were able to kind of grow there. And then I started to kind of interact with these retailers like Office Depot and Staples and interact with Amazon and Amazon, was nice enough to invite me out to Seattle. And I began to see this B2B space that exists. Like it's kind of there's a lot of revenue coming from a lot of different places. And to me, there needs to be some consolidation and organization and distribution. And like Amazon is doing a lot of this online, but it's a little bit different than how we're trying to proceed forward. But like to me, the opportunity is just too big. The business consumable market in the United States is gigantic. Probably 80, 100, several hundred. Hundreds of probably not hundreds, but probably over 100 billion in revenue. I mean, just anything from toner to toilet paper to water or coffee. It's a huge market, and so I began to like, dude, like. And I began to like meet local companies that operate here in Huntsville and interact with other people in the industry. I'm like, these people need to advance technologically, and they need to embrace scale. They need to embrace efficiency. They need to build better systems. They need to build, or they're not going to survive. And I was like, I think I can do this a lot better. And I think that, my vision, the whole vision of the business is, to kind of bring this full circle, is like our core vision is to improve the lives of our sphere of influence. So that
unpack that for me. I know
so we define that as,
chatted about it briefly. Just unpack that. What do you mean by that?
So we define that as everyone our operations touch. And so, and that's important to me because that is our suppliers, our employees, our customers, our owners, our consultants, people like you, Sean, our people we meet online, people we interact with, the goal of the business is to optimize for the whole. And I believe if we do that, let's take a supplier example. If we marginalize our supplier, he's not going to help us long-term. He probably might fire us long-term. But if we work together as a team and sometimes we give and sometimes we take, it builds a much more sustainable long-term business. And so to me is like, I see what's cool about distribution, especially something as big as this industry, is it's complicated. It's look what Amazon has built, look what Walmart has built, look what these retailers, they're huge, complicated machines. You have to merge a human organization with a technology organization together. And to me is the way the stuff that we sell is distributed in the United States is inefficient. And I think we can do it more efficiently, and we can offer our customers similar to better pricing with better service with less work to get the product Because remember, buying a product has to do, one is you have to go get it, and two, you have to pay for it. Both of those have cost. One is monetary, one is time. That's something that Amazon has done so well with the app, for consumers. And so, our kind of vision there is kind of grown from 5,000 a month to like, man, this might be a couple $1 million business. Like, I think this is a seriously great opportunity to make small businesses more efficient. As I like to say, is I want to change how small businesses consume products and services in this country. And to me, it's kind of morphed into this thing of like, they're consuming this and they're buying that and they're doing this from all these different places. Like, we need to pack that together, build a better system, and make it more organized and make it more efficient for them. It's kind of this bigger vision that's kind of snowballed into.
And you mentioned to me that one of the issues around and part of the driver for this sort of opportunity to kind of optimize for the whole and within the sphere of influence was you could see that actually there were other players in the industry not doing that, or, the kind of unintended or intended negative consequences with sort of power imbalances, which of course naturally occurs when you end up with some big players. But that was part of the sort of genesis for that. Yeah.
That was where it came from. I mean, Jeff Bezos says we start with a customer and work backwards. Those are his words. And dude, he has done one hell of a job. I mean, that guy, it gives me chill bumps thinking about what he's built. I mean, just the vision and the tactical ability to execute what he's built is, how much this iPad is sitting on an Amazon box right now. I mean, it's crazy what he's done. And what's funny is I think in his last shareholder letter, he made a comment like, we're going to be the best employer in the world, or the best, employee supportive company in the world now too. And so like, I think he's embracing that, but I felt like that if that's where he started, to me, it just didn't sit right with me. Everybody chooses how to run their own business, but that's kind of where that came from, is like, I'm not just going to optimize for them. I want to optimize for all, because I think if we think very long term, we're all
what I like
on the same
about it
page.
is it can also take, when you think about building an organization, you're also trying to find great people, right? And fundamentally, people are motivated by emotions, and it allows you to take a business that may not be sort of sexy on the outside. It's like, okay, well, it's office consumables and office supplies, and it's like, well, how excited are they getting about the folder or the stapler or whatever? But it's like, but this actually has a real impact on people in the world. When you take this philosophy and you embed it in the culture of the organization, and the people involved can see the impact that that's having on others, all of a sudden they have the opportunity to get excited about the business model regardless of the product, because they're thinking about, how do we create value in these human interactions, leveraging the efficiency of the system, the systemization that we can build in this company to bring it together.
Yeah, I think that I was discussing with one of my colleagues, and they said, "Oh, and it's just office supplies. All we sell is office supplies." I said, "You're very foolish if you think we only sell office supplies." And then I said, "Remember the book we just read? Simon Sinek says, people don't buy what you sell, they buy why you sell it." I think that's very, very important. Is the reality is that people need this stuff. And
sorry, Owen, we just lost you for a second there. You said the Simon Sinek book, we don't buy what you sell.
Oh, so he said, so he said, start with why. It's such a famous book. And he says, people don't buy what you sell, they buy why you sell it. I think that was paraphrasing, but it's about why, and to me, it's very much like, I'm a human and I'm selling it, and a human is buying it. And our job is to make a connection with that buyer and build a relationship. And the more we understand about them, the more we understand about their operations and their needs, we can do a better job for them. Also for us, to me, it's a lot of fun. Like, we have a party here. We call it our back to school party, and we're supposed to have it like in a month. And we probably aren't going to be able to do it because of COVID, because the cases are moving so quickly. But like, we have an opportunity where one of our factory partners in China, he came here with his whole family, and you have an opportunity to meet actual customers in the United States that his product is sold to.
That's cool.
To me, that's kind of what this is about. Is like building this big system and then connecting human beings between the pieces. Like, that's our job. Like, we're the guy in the middle connecting the best factories in the world with the end users. And we want to do it like in a very human way.
Well, I think that's the whole point of automation and systemization. It's not making the job and the business less human. It's creating the opportunity for it to be more human, because then the humans that you have are not spending time on low value manual tasks, things that could be done better by a machine or a system or a process. They've actually got greater capacity to bring creativity, to create connections, to create relationships, to serve customers, to create opportunities, because they've actually got space to do so. So let me dig into a couple of the key moments. We've talked about, and I asked you the question, what were some of the kind of key moments or the key decisions that you made that you feel like really have helped sort of enable this rapid scaling of the business? Take me through some of those.
Yeah, I think it was like, to me, it was very subtle, like slowly, like, it's kind of like if you throw a frog in a boiling water, supposedly he'll jump out. But if you put him in there and you boil it, he never notices. Like, to me, that's kind of what happened between 5,000 a month and now my vision today. But there were some like times where I can look back and be like, there were big like stretch moments, we'll call them, like big stressors that I had to get over. I had to let this get out of the way. And one of them was beginning. I mean, writing that, paying $8,554 or something. Like, that was a big moment. That was a big risk, and people thought I was a nut job.
What was the money for?
That's the truth. It was the first product, the first set of goods, the first 500 envelopes, like to begin, like that was the business. You have to buy something and resell it. And I don't know if I'm gonna be able to resell it, so that was a big step. And then, getting comfortable spending, $10, $20, $30, $40,000 on a purchase order. That was a big step. And then quitting my job. Mm-hmm. That was a huge step. It was that, I've been told my entire life that this is what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to get a good job and have good benefits. And then all of a sudden it said that I think I can add more value to the world and do bigger things by not doing that. And it was a mindset shift. I had to and that happened like in 8 months, 9 months. And so my wife and I made the decision, I'm going to quit my job. And then I started working with the Chinese. That was a big step. I remember where I was sitting at my family's condo at the beach, and I sent my first PO to a Chinese vendor named Robin, who I ended up having an awesome dinner with in Pyongyang, China 3 months later. But making that mental jump of, I'm going to expand the horizons of outside the United States and work with an outside vendor who I can't even speak the same, we didn't even speak language very well. And that changed things. That is really what took it to a whole new level. And so I went over there in November of 2017 and began, and I'd never been to China. I went by myself, and it was one of the greatest experiences of my life. I'm so proud of the relationships we've built there, really built all over the world, but there was just a lot of fun. And I traveled all through China that first trip. And the second trip I went in December, and I have some pretty crazy stories from that. But like that trip, I got mezz debt that I wasn't for sure I was going to get, but I was told it was coming. And so I got on a plane in 2 days to China and flew to China and committed like $250,000, $300,000 worth of POs when I didn't have the money to pay for it. I was like, whatever, I'll figure it out. Like, and on the way there, I figured out what I was going to buy. And I traveled around. I was in Ningbo, Hangzhou, Shanghai, and then back to Ningbo. And those POs took the business from 5 million to 15 in 6 months. Yeah. That's annualized, not like, from like a monthly times 12. Maybe 7 months. It took it from it's probably like more like 8 million to 15 to 18. But that range, that PO changed the business, and those POs plural. And then we met two factories there that both came to the United States in Huntsville from Shanghai and Ningbo 2 years later to my house for my party. We met. That was that trip where we met for the first time. And one of them was a very big factory, an incredible strategic partner, incredible guy, incredible family. We had to kind of convince them to work with us. They were a pretty big company, and we were not a big company. And so that was a huge deal. And then on the way back, I was so exhausted. I got swindled out of money. Well, we probably
you usually come back from trips to China like that exhausted because your liver has taken an absolute beating from too many nights of the rice wine.
And on the way to the airport, I had to change airports from Ningbo to Pudong Airport, and the cab broke down the side of the road, and I didn't know a cop came, and there was a story that we can talk over Australian beers
Virtual
one
beers.
day when I visit. And so I ended up, the cop helped me get another cab. I made it, got on the plane and flew home. And I blacked out on the plane in between I got up, I don't remember getting up from my seat, and I woke up in the back galley. I think it was a 777s. You know, they had those like, the flight attendant seats back there. And I woke up on the seat, and I got an oxygen mask on me, and this Chinese doctor like giving me like pressure point stuff. And I was like, what is going on? And the lady was like, are you like drunk? I was like, and the other flight attendant was like, no, he's been working for 9 hours. Like, that's no. And I think just exhaustion from that trip. But anyway, so that wasn't a crazy trip, but that really, really took the business to those orders took the business to enough to like hire. And when I began to hire and I began to interact with people, with my own employees, and like trying to watch them grow, it changed. It will never, it didn't happen like, I hired them and it started, but like over like between 3 to 8 to 9 to 10 months to a year of that beginning to build a relationship with my employees and watching us grow together, and the opportunity that we saw and the potential for us personally to grow, for them to grow together, that was it. It was over after that. Now I got the bug, and there was no going back. Does that answer your question? Like, it's kind of a lot.
Oh yeah. One of the things I really like about what you said, and I was reflecting on a podcast that we've done with Isha Oberoi, who runs this business called Afia Care Services, essentially home and disability and aged care provider. And she scaled massively, from 0 to 350 FTE over the last 13, 14 years. And one of the things that was really interesting was she said, essentially, to grow the business, you got to grow yourself. If you're a first time founder, it's actually your development, your willingness to take risks, your willingness to step into those next challenges that you're uncomfortable about. But in the absence of taking those, the business can't grow with you because it's going to be limited value. And especially in those early stages, and that sounds exactly what you've done. And you've kind of gone, okay, took a risk, got a bit of confidence, that seems to work.
Exactly
okay, next risk, okay, that looks like I should do that, but I'm uncomfortable about it, but I'm going to do it anyway. And then each time, you build a bit more confidence, take the next risk. Something works out, some things don't work out, but then you keep leveling up. That's really
that's kind of what I talk a lot about. And is like, to me, what's so exciting about this and why I don't have a lot of interest in selling the business is like, to me, is that let's see how good I can get at this. Like, to me, this is a great experience. One, to, I hope that we can seriously improve our sphere of influence, and hopefully we can make it big as possible. But like, let's like see, like, this gives me an opportunity to like really get good at this. And we'll see where it goes. Maybe I peak tomorrow, maybe I peak in 40 years, but like, our first core value is relentlessly pursue better. And that's my objective, is I want to get better and better and better every day, and we'll see where it goes.
I love that. Yeah, that's beautiful. So tell me about, you had some challenging moments as well. I know there was a site launch recently. When you sort of reflect back on some of the most difficult moments along this journey, what's the first one that comes to mind?
I mean, I think that each phase of the business had a different problem. And they all have different problems. But I think the first problem that strikes me is cash flow, is the nightmare of cash flow and the fear of cash flow. I remember when I was, issuing my second PO, and we added like a line on the PO that my wife was like, you got to add this. You got to add this rule. It was like, if we can cancel the PO up to a week before production because we didn't want to get stuck with this inventory that we couldn't sell, because you're always behind. And cash is, so you're outlaying this money, outlaying this risk. So I had to get over that. That was really, really scary. And then we had situations, we call it the white. So that thing that changed the business, those POs, I bought $30,000 to $40,000 of stuff that was wrong. I had to like basically throw it away.
Just to go back one step, just to help people who aren't, there's probably many people who are here in services businesses, and their cash conversion cycle is very different.
That's a good point.
The time they spend $1 to get a customer to the time they receive money from the customer to enable the cost of delivery, it can be a very different profile. What does that look like for you? So from the time that how does the sort of cash, what's the time frame of basically spending $1 to be able to make one, and then actually receiving that dollar from a customer?
it's a funny thing. It depends on where you're buying it, and it depends on your payment terms, and it depends on your lead time. So if you buy,
just a typical example.
So in the U.S., we'll issue a PO. We don't have to pay for it till it ships, and we can sell it and get the money back pretty close within 30 days of when we get it. But if we buy it from overseas, especially right now with how bad the world supply chain is, we'll outlay cash. It may be 6 months before we get it back right now.
Yeah, right.
I mean, it's crazy. Now, normally that's maybe 3.5, 4 months, but it's a huge, and so you have to fund. And I remember we were running negative cash flow projections, trying to figure out how much money I was going to borrow in mezz debt. And it basically, you start here at zero and you just see the debt just pile up because, the inventory lands, you got to buy more before you get paid for the first order. And so it just keeps trickling down. It was like, to generate, I don't remember the numbers, but like if I wanted, it was like I needed like 10 grand per SKU to buy it, and it would like peak at like 4 or 5 months, and it would start to pay itself back. But it takes 6, 7, 8, 9 months to kind of go cash flow positive on an item that you buy overseas in our business.
Yeah, right.
Something like that. So that's a big problem, and I didn't really understand that. I don't have a business education. Like I watched the money not come back, and I was like, I want to keep growing. Okay, how do I do that? And I began
how did you figure out what your financing options were?
People, man. I mean, it goes back to people. It's like, I learned within a month I was interviewing accountants, and I met a guy named Tom Albright who I've become great friends with, and I'm like building this little group of people. Like, so we go get drinks once a month. And now we have my accountant, my lawyer, my financial advisor, and my banker. But I just met with him, started, going out and getting drinks with him, and he taught me accounting. He taught me what a balance sheet was, what an income statement was, what a cash flow statement was, how they connect. And he introduced me. We had a couple of connections in like, we had a private banker that we had just met. My mother-in-law used them, and we met them. And so they helped us a little bit, but the money was very small. But really when you run into a problem, you just beat the hell out of it till you get the answer. And that was kind of my solution, is Googling it, calling people, just ask questions until you get the answer. It was kind of and that was where that was. That was probably the biggest problem. But like, that's not necessarily like a problem, like, oh, we made a big mistake. It was just something that we had to deal with.
Overcome.
But the cost of that problem is you buy stuff before you can sell it, before you know it works. And so we had in that big PO that we issued, those POs, plural, in December of 2017 that changed the business. We bought about $40,000 of stuff that was bad. We had to throw away. It came into the United States. We call it the whiteboard award because we want to embrace mistakes, because we have to move. When you move quickly, you screw stuff up. Mm-hmm. That's how it goes. As Elon Musk says, mistakes are required here.
Yeah.
But we bought some whiteboards, and we didn't have very good packaging on them. And so when they were shipped to UPS, they showed up broken.
Oh no!
I mean, you should have seen these. You should have seen these things. I mean, they were like mangled. Some of them got delivered fine, but we had to throw them away. And that was one of several couple $100,000 mistakes of buying inventory that we couldn't really sell.
Yeah.
But that's part of it, It's just, I say that now after it's over.
Yeah.
We've already
easy in hindsight to go, well, it was part of the learning.
Yeah.
At the time, it's a huge issue, right?
It's painful. Yeah. And so that was some of the big mistakes there. And then I think as I began to hire, it opens this just Pandora's box of just screw ups. And I think the funniest one, I think that you can get a kick out of, is I don't know if you use DISC.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, DISC profile.
It's a personality. And so I'm a 100D natural, and then adapted, I'm like 93, 94. And so when I started hiring, I used to work for Lockheed Martin, which is a huge defense contractor, the biggest defense contractor in the world. There's a lot of like ex-generals that they're leaders there. And so when I worked professionally, one of the first jobs I had as an intern for this high-level executive there. And I was around that general. So I watched him manage. So what I learned about management was kind of from him. and this colonel that I worked for, ex-colonel. And so when I hired employees, I was like, you know what, we're going to do it my way. Your way's wrong. We're going to do it my way. And I learned very quickly that is not effective. Like very quickly. And it's stupid. And it's funny as I'm sitting here, this book helped me learn that. And I recommend this book to anybody trying to scale a business. This book,
which book is that?
This is Ray Dalio's Principles.
Oh, Ray Dalio's Principles.
And other than Millionaire Fastlane that began the idea to begin this book has changed that problem. Talks a lot about
What's a couple of things you've taken from that book that you've implemented that have really made a big impact in the way that you've built this business?
So dealing with that problem is owning that you know very little. And I thought I knew a lot, and all I learned is I know almost nothing. And you need to, when you have a disagreement with someone, you need to, instead of getting mad, you have to control your emotions, and you have to understand, why are they disagreeing with me? That's true power, not the other way around. True power is being able to control your emotions and get what you want in a situation, not letting your emotions control you. And this book talks so much about psychology and I hired an organizational psychologist who's an executive coach, and she coaches me a lot about, Owen, like, stand up above yourself and watch yourself. How are you interacting with this individual? How do they want to be interacted with? So a lot of it was like it taught me a lot about thinking about my interactions with others and how I influence others. And it wasn't, oh, well, we're going to do it my way. It was, what works for them? How do I understand what works for them? And I'm going to do that, because that's what's going to help me get what I want. That was probably one of the biggest lessons I've ever. And then the second one, and a very, very, very hard one, and he preaches this radical transparency. When you have a problem, say it. Doesn't do you any good, and doesn't do me any good to hold it in. Just because it's hard doesn't mean it's right. You need to say it. Dude, Sean, I don't like how your attitude was in that meeting. I think that your response to Karen was inappropriate, and I think it was demoralizing to her, and you were not able to get what you wanted out of that meeting because of how you reacted with her. And this behavior has been consistent the last 3 months, and it's not okay here. You can't do that here anymore. How about you and I work together, and I'll help coach you? We're not going to do that anymore. And I'll give you feedback as we do that. Having those kind of conversations were unimaginable to me 2.5 years ago. And now I try to have them. I have them every week, every day, just about. You have to, because everyone does a bad job at that. And it's very difficult for you to understand your implications, your impact to others. And so I hired an EA 8 months ago, and it's one of the things I have her do that I ask her to do is like, Melinda, how did I do in that meeting? Was I positive? Was I negative? How did you feel that so-and-so interacted with me? Was it negative or positive? So I think those are the biggest things, man, is that like Melinda says, Melinda came from the Pentagon. Her last job was with a 3-star general. And she was like, Owen, you must remember that as a leader, everyone sees what you do. And she constantly hammers that into me. And how you interact with others and being honest, even though it's hard, I think may be the biggest management lesson I've learned so far. And one more, understanding that if you don't communicate clear and continue to communicate clear, they don't understand. They don't. You think they do. I think something and Sean thinks something, but we've decided that we've interpreted our own ways, and the disagreement creates tension until we get in sync. That's the way it is.
Well, I like that. The concept, that the purpose of communication is actually to transfer the intention and the meaning, not just the words. So, you might hear the same words and have it mean something entirely different to you. I'm going, hey, he's got it. But that doesn't
dude,
mean
in my experience, and honestly, I've begun to, so we met through WAPIO. And so I've begun to interact with other WAPIO members, and I've consistently hearing the same thing as I think one of the biggest assumptions I made as a manager is when I say something, they understood it. I could not have been more wrong. And so now I have read the book, Measure What Matters, and I'm implementing OKRs, and I'm hammering. I am haggling over wording of an OKR, because I know that if we get on the same page, then we don't have to talk about it anymore. And then it's all digital on a platform that we can go look at. But dude, that's it, man. Transparency, communication, and how you influence others, and understanding that you you have negative behaviors. And if you don't want to admit that, then you're not going to be a good leader. I'm sorry. You're just not going to.
I love that because, when you're trained, if you think about your background and your training, like engineers fundamentally are taught that they're sort of the smartest people in the room. They're supposed to know everything. And you've had to come in and just completely undo all of your conditioning and go, you know what? I don't know anything. And I'm going to have to be super vulnerable here. And I'm going to have to be a massive learner. And I'm going to have to implement constantly and constantly seek feedback and constantly seek input so I can get better, so that my business can get better. And, I think it's a hallmark of a great leader. I interviewed another guest on the podcast recently, and I received an email from her 2 days later saying, how did I go on the podcast? Do you think I could have done anything differently? What else did you notice about how I was behaving? And this is a founder who's built a very successful business, really significant scale, still learning, still looking for feedback, still trying to improve. To your point, full commitment to getting better all the time.
So, it's funny as an engineer, the way one of the favorite things I learned about in school was control systems. So how a machine can interact with this environment. What we can do is remarkable. The fact that we have eyes and we can, I can see this iPad, I can touch it. Well, that's incredibly complicated to make a machine do that. So how does it do it? It has a mechanism. It has something that it can move and do things, and it has sensors. So it has feedback. That's how a machine learns and gets better. Humans are the same way. Like, we have to get out in the world and go screw up and mess things up and listen and watch. And to me, the people that listen and watch the best and know and learn from it are probably the most successful people on the planet. Like, I think that I'll never forget what Andy Jassy said, the new CEO of Amazon, just recently, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I guess about a month now, he's been CEO. He said, Jeff is the best learner I've ever met in my life. I don't think that's a coincidence that Jeff is also the richest man in the world.
Yeah, I think that's so true. So true. I know that you and I could speak for hours, but I'm conscious that we're going to end up running out of time.
Sorry.
I want to ask you a question.
I do this.
No, that's good. That's good. It's fabulous. When you think back on the last 5 years, right? And particularly the last 3.5, where things have just been accelerating. What are you proudest of?
The people I've hired and the team I built, without question.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's almost like I get like an emotional response when I think about that. Like, the people that I have in my big office, and my offices in Chicago, words can't describe. Like, I'm so proud. Like, some of them have become like best friends. Like, that's what I'm proud of. Like, if this thing crashes and burns tomorrow, we never reach the $1 billion goals. That doesn't matter. Like, what matters is that the people that we touch. Because, like, at the end is, dude, like, what's the point? Like again, it's like, why are you in business? And it's not to make money. And if it's to make money, then just like, I think that Henry Ford said, if you're in a business to make money, it's not a very good business. Or it's not a very good business I want to be involved in. And then like, I remember Phil Knight said something like, one of his quotes was like, business is not about to make money, but we're going to need a lot of money to get there. It's like, money is such a huge piece of it, but it's not the purpose. And so, I've just loved hiring people and working with people. And right now I'm really excited because I think I can start hiring again because the business is starting to throw off some more money and we're building these forecasts. I'm like, yes, I can add this people and this people. And I'm getting excited again. But it's like, what? And then I learn from them. Like, I'm hiring these smart people and they're teaching me all this stuff and I'm getting better. But I mean, I could talk all day about that, but no doubt about it. The team I have built and building are by far my proudest of from a business perspective.
So if you had your time over again, what's one thing that you would do differently, knowing what you know now?
From age zero or
from
5 years ago?
From 5 years ago.
From 5 years ago. Read this book a year earlier.
Read Principles earlier.
For starters. Probably thought bigger, faster. And this book was kind of the impetus of that, is like, it's ironic. So I played golf in college. Golf is all here. I mean, you got to be able to shoot par, but shooting par is not that hard. But to go from par to on tour is all here.
Yeah.
And I couldn't do it. I couldn't. I played golf with guys in high school and college that played on tour. A guy in my high school was played on tour. Guys I beat and played with. No one played quite as good as them, but I could have played like serious golf, but I was weak here. Business is the same way. It's no different. Is that you have to get out of your own way. I think that I think that when you're 7 or 8 years old or 10 years old, you think anything is possible. And then you become a high school student and they beat you down to get a good job. And becoming someone like Jeff Bezos is not possible. Becoming a famous entrepreneur is not possible. Becoming a famous athlete is not possible. And that's how I felt. And then all of a sudden I woke up 3 years ago and said, this shit is possible. Now becoming Jeff Bezos, I mean, that's a whole, I mean, that guy is unreal. It's unreal. Like, I'm not saying that, but like, you can build a serious, enduring enterprise that actually infects thousands or hundreds or millions of people. That's possible. But the second you don't realize it's possible, it's not possible. And I think it took me too long to realize that. I mean, and luckily I'm only 32 and I got, hopefully a long time. But I mean, I've talked to this young man named Philip, who is 21 years old. He understands that. And I'm trying to help him understand it. I met him and he told me, I'm going to do $100 million in revenue before this is over. I said, why $100 million? You're not going to be happy with $100 million. Dude, you're 21. He's got like a $3 or $4 million business. I go, $100 million's nothing, man. Why 100? Why not $1 billion? Why not 10 billion? Like what, why? And so I think that kind of clicked about 1.5 years ago, 2 years ago, that I think that your brain just gets in your way and you got to get it out of your way and go. And I think one other thing is you need to think about objectives for what you want in life and what you want out of work and your family and whatever it is you're doing, and focus on that. I think it goes back to, like, we talk about a machine. And that's what's funny. We're trying to build a lot of software in my company, and you cannot program unless you tell the machine what you want to do. And it's this subtly brilliant and clear thing that is now I'm applying to the business as a whole in my life. It's like, dude, you need to be deliberate as hell about what you want to get out of this situation. Like, I'm talking about beat that goal to death until you know exactly.
And that's usually the hardest thing to figure out. Right? Is actually what you want.
It is hard. What do you want in life?
Yeah, sounds so easy, but back
again,
you're going to have to get some commission from Ray Dalio, I think, for this book.
Dude, I've given like 50 copies of this book to people, literally. Like, anytime I interact with anybody, I give them a copy. I write them a note and give them a copy. But he says you can have almost anything in life, but you cannot have everything. And I think so thinking big earlier and thinking really, 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 really hard about what you want.
Well, I'm now going to ask you a really challenging question, because you've just given me some really amazing reflections and nuggets. I have a little segment that I do with every guest called Above All Else. And so I want you to now kind of go out into the future, right? So you're only 32, you got a long way to go to get to your yearning years. So I want you to go right out, imagining you're at the stage where you've actually achieved, from a business perspective, probably all the things that you hoped that you'd achieve or that you wanted to achieve. You started all the businesses, you've had the impact on people that you wanted to. And the CEO of the world's largest global community of first-time founders, most of them still sort of sub $5-10 million businesses who are just hungry to figure out how they're going to scale. She asks you and gives you a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to share your wisdom with this group of people. And she says, I want you to finish this sentence. Above all else, the 3 things that founders have to get right if they want to scale are, what would be your 3 above all else's?
Relentless pursuit for knowledge, build systems, because you have to build systems and standards, but you cannot automate things that are not standardized. And if you can't automate, you can't scale. The third thing, believe in people. Believe in people, empower people. Believe in the people that work for you, or you're not going to go anywhere. I mean, that's the truth. That's like, we kind of look back at like some of the biggest things I've learned is like, when I quit my job, I said, I'm never hiring. I don't want to deal with that. Think about that change. And what I just told you, the greatest thing I've done so far is the team I've built. Like, you have to learn to work through people if you want to scale. So, I mean, being relentlessly learning, because you can't do either of the second two things if you aren't willing to learn it. 2, build systems and relentlessly pursue them, improve them. And 3, believe in people. Believe and trust in people.
That is beautiful. Thank you so much, Owen. And look, I'd really like to acknowledge you for the way that you've tackled this journey. And as I alluded to before, I think it's so refreshing for people to hear, founders who are scaling. Sometimes you put these guys that you might, guys and girls, you see them in the media. Some of them are just ultra confident, and you just imagine they're just monstering everything. They're not people who have got any vulnerabilities. They're not having to learn much along. They've just already figured it out. But first-time founders who are scaling businesses, because they're vulnerable, because they're learning machines, because they're trying to figure out how to do it better, and they're taking risks and they're making it happen. That is an exceptional example of the value of humility and the value of personal progress and its impact on business, and to be able to bring together a business that on the outside can look relatively, uninteresting because it's e-commerce and office supplies and so on. But actually the heart of this business is like a pulsating beast that's capturing the hearts and minds of your people, and they're having real impact on your entire sphere of influence. I think that's a beautiful example of how business can be done. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom.
Thank you for having me. It's really cool that, I just got into YPO, and it's so cool to meet people like you. Who knows, I think that, my strategy is just put myself out there and just see what happens. I respond to your message, have no idea what was going to happen. And we got to meet, and I got to hear your story, and, maybe I'll meet some of the people that listen to this, and, it's just, you never know what's going to happen,
That's it.
But glad to be there. And thank you so much for taking the time to hear my crazy story and the crazy dream and that we're trying to make a reality.
I look forward to hearing some of the other stories from your trips to China on a few beers. How do people get in contact with you or follow along with what you're doing?
Sure. Just bluesummitSupplies.com. I'm not real, gosh, that's a good question. We have, like our newsletter is we have a thing called Behind the Blue, where we talk about our cultural messages. And I'm on LinkedIn, and I don't, you can always message me there. But I don't use Twitter. Probably should, but,
Sure.
Yeah, bluesummitSupplies.com and just message me on LinkedIn. If if you have any questions or anything I can help with, like I as you can tell, I like talking about this stuff. I have a hell of a lot to learn, and my opinion is what it's worth, which is free. But if you ever want to reach out, please do.
Much appreciated. Well, thank you so much, folks. I hope you enjoyed the show today. Huge thanks to Owen Franklin. A couple of things before you go. If you got value from the learnings that you got from Owen today, of course, please go to Apple Podcasts, subscribe, review. That just helps other people find it, but it also really gives a big kick to the team behind the scenes who put this whole thing together for you. If you'd like to know when new episodes are going to drop or free tools and resources from some of our guests are made available, just jump on the website, scaleupspodcast.com, and you can register your email there, or you can find us on any of the socials on at scaleupspodcast.com. And unfortunately, the only one we're not on is Twitter, because it's not big for our audience. But remember that the only thing that can guarantee that you won't scale is actually giving up in the first place. And you can hear through Owen's story today, lots of periods where stuff was tough. He could have jumped off the bus because it seemed a bit hard or seemed a bit too risky, but he kept going. So you've got to stay unshakable in your faith that you're going to get there, but you have to remain flexible in your approach. You've been listening to the Scale Ups podcast. I'm Sean Steele. Look forward to speaking with you again next week. Thanks very much, Owen. G'day everyone, just a couple of quick things before you go. If you have questions that you'd love myself or an upcoming guest to tackle about challenges that you're facing in scaling your business, please just jump straight on the website, scaleupspodcast.com. You can record your message straight from your mobile by hitting the button on the right-hand side of the page, or you can just email them the old-fashioned way, questions@scaleupspodcast.com. And just a quick reminder, nothing we spoke about today constitutes financial or business advice. If you are considering making big decisions in your business, seek out a professional who can look at your situation in detail and make sure you're getting sound, personalized advice. Thanks for listening. Look forward to being back in your podcast feed next week.